Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of our online Bible study. This is our study on the Battle Buddies, our series on the Armor Bearer. And so I hope that you've been really enjoying these. Again, these are released on Thursday mornings, and the release is kind of dependent upon my schedule on when I'm able to get through this. And it is my prayer and hope that you've been enjoying these, as well as you've been enjoying the wonderful the spring season. And I'm the only reason I'm not outside is because of my current setup in regards to just the overall lighting, the microphones, the cameras, my computer to monitor and make sure that things are happening right. And so my current setup, there's a lot of wires, and that's kind of hinders me from getting outside. But I do hope that, especially during the summer, that I find a very great creative way to give you that online study outside, especially with the way the weather is nicely, especially as it is nice and bright. I opened up the window, the shade, so you can kind of see a little bit of the light, and I know that kind of does a different effect, but it's nice out today, and so we got to enjoy it. And so I hope you've been going through this. Today's study, we're going to talk a little bit about a sensitive topic in regards to the armor bearer role. And we've already looked at in past episodes, we considered the when failure occurs in the part of the armor bearer and when failure occurs in the part of the master. And we discussed those things. We've also looked at the importance of when you go through trying and hard times and how you have to go through the call of being an armor bearer together, and those are really important things. Last the last previous entry in the study, we talked about the cost and the cost of what it means to be an armor bearer, and how the cost does take our whole life, and so that's a very important one. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, then you can either pause here and go and watch it now, or you can grab it when we're through with today. But both are really, really good moving forward in that. And I want to bring up, again, we'll talk about a sensitive moment in the armor bearer, a sensitive topic in regards to the armor bearer role. I want to bring up a unique principle in the New Testament that really kind of shows maybe the dependency, for lack of a better word, for the role of the armor bearer. And but this principle I want to talk about, this unique principle, for lack of a better descriptor, we're gonna call it the master's plan. Okay, so the master's plan in regards to this role of armor bearing, and so the text I'm going to be reading from the English Standard Version today. The text we're going to go through is in Matthew 26, and we're going to read verses 47 through 56. And this is a pivotal moment in the ministry of Jesus. This is a pivotal moment in regards to the ministry and the expectation and the plans of the disciples, as well as what Christ is seeking to accomplish. And so we're going to see that on display. So again, Matthew 26, 47 through 56. It says that while he was still speaking, Jesus was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him." And he came up to Jesus at once and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you came to do." Then they came up and laid hands on him, on Jesus, and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send to me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scriptures be fulfilled that it must be so?" At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples left him and fled. Now, in this passage, we get to witness the arrest of Jesus as it leads up to his crucifixion on the cross. But I want you to get the depth of the master's plan principle. The master's plan principle. We really have to understand the mindset and the process of his armor bearers that were present in that moment. There's a right off in verse 50. In verse 50, Jesus' response is able to tell us that he knows exactly what is going down and he's in on it. Okay? So in verse 50, he says, friends, do what you came to do. And they laid up and they seized him. He's in this mindset. He knows what's going on. And he tells them, do what you came to do. And that's right off this. He knows exactly what's going on, and he's on par with it. However, that even though this is what the master is planning to do, and this is what he wants to do, and this is what his plan was from the start, his followers, Jesus's followers, didn't get it. They didn't quite grasp the fullness of what is happening, and they it's in my notes I say they did not get the memo. They missed it. They didn't get the memo. They missed out what he was planning on doing. And you read that they're in this armor bearer mindset, and so they go, we must save the master. And that's where in verse 51 that one of the disciples has a sword and he pulls it out. Why? Because his master is at risk. It's a very great way of putting it. He sees this risk occurring, and so he's, as an armor bearer, I'm going to protect my master, and so I'm going to prepare for this. You see, in their eyes, Jesus, the Messiah, was not supposed to be arrested in defeat. He was not supposed to do that. And the disciples had this common thought, and when it came to for most of the Jews as well, pardon me, the disciples and the Jews had this very common thought, very prolific thought, that Jesus was not going to be arrested. He was not going to be defeated. Rather, he was going to their days with the Messiah. Their thought was that he was going to be king, and that Jesus was going to deal with the injustices of Rome, and he was going to restore the Jewish people. And so that was their expectation of Christ, is that he's going to do these great things, and we need to be saving him for that. This is not how it's supposed to go down. And so that's their understanding in this moment. And so again, that sword comes out. No, he is the king. This is the influence. He's supposed to save us, and that's the direction they're supposed to go, and that's what their desire is. And so this whole idea that their king is being arrested did not sit well with them. And herein lies the principle, because they had one expectation for what the king was supposed to do, and Jesus was in line with other plans. The master had a different plan. It's really funny. Many modern disciples, many modern Christians, followers of Christ, whether they are planning to go into ministry or desire to be a part of a ministry, modern mindset that has crept in amongst many is that they attach themselves to kingly ministries. And I please notice, if you're watching, you can see me doing my fingers, but if you're listening, I'm doing the air quotes. Many modern disciples want to attach themselves to kingly ministries. And by that I mean big names, big lights, big cities, etc., big money. There's a prestige that they go for, that they want, that name recognition, or whether by name, by person, or by location. They go through these levels of attachment of trying to build their ministry. Um, and so it's that's the biggest thing. They do it for the money or for the job status instead of simple obedient of the obedient status. That's the thing, is like we have this expectation of being mighty and kingly and great name recognition, great influence and authority, and that's our huge expectation. When simply put, it comes down to um, real success isn't about name recognition. It isn't about place recognition or great financial capabilities. Really, what it comes down to is that are we simply being obedient to the word of the Lord? Um, so many people, when they're going into ministry, avoid the troublemakers. They avoid the least popular. They avoid the hard tasks, and they go after the easy and the prestigious. And so many that's the common issue that I see amongst younger armor bearers, or those who are rising to enter into ministry. But I've also seen it where a leader who is being obedient and going into a biblically right way in an unpopular direction, um, that it can seem really foolish. And so, well, I've seen it where leaders try to make godly decisions and they're going in a direction that they know they're supposed to go in, standing upon truth in an unpopular season, um, being that labeled as a troublemaker when you speak out against something that you know is wrong. And so you speak out and you get labeled a troublemaker. And so that happens. And what happens in those moments when a leader has to take that appropriate stance, and then that, again, very similar to our text, is that the armor bearer becomes protective and begins to kind of push back. That battle buddy is like, no, that is not how you make friends. You, my leader, should not do that thing that you desire to do. You should not stir the waters. You should not be polarizing. You should not. And so the armor bearers begin to push back on their leader, and they're saying, hey, look, no, this is not what you're supposed to do. But the leader, the godly leader, the one who knows this is biblically true, this is where I must plant my flag. But then the armor bearer starts pushing back against that, and I've seen that. They fight back because it does not fit their perceived plans, and that's an issue that the armor bearer presents. I mean, they're still trying to do their job. They still feel like they're trying to defend their leader. They're trying to come alongside their leader. They just feel that their leader is being suicidal. And yet, what the leader is doing what he knows he's supposed to do, called by God, and he's standing firmly upon the truth, then hey, if it's a moment where the Lord calls him to be suicidal, then hey, leader, go for it. But I've seen where battle buddies, armor bearers, push back in those moments. One thing we have to remind ourselves that when we are in that armor bearer battle buddy role, one thing we need to remind ourselves in those moments of being in the battle buddy status or the armor bearer status is that we don't have all of the facts. And I've been teaching a principle to a few of our people here in the church and my family when it comes to reacting to certain things, or dealing with anger or becoming upset, and why do people do certain things. And the principle I've been taking them is what I call the incomplete deck. And a lot of times, we're having to make choices and respond, and it's really easy to get emotional in those responses to people. But really, they're making decisions on what they know and what they have, and that for many of us, we can get angry at them making a decision when we realize that maybe we're the ones with an incomplete deck. Maybe we don't have all the facts that they do, and that there is a bigger plan. In verses 52 through 54, Jesus makes a huge revelation to the disciples. And that revelation, just to paraphrase here, he basically says, I can call down 12 legions of angels to assist me if I so needed. And that's what he goes. He basically he goes right in there. Do you not think I can appeal to my Father and that He will send more? But how then can these scriptures be fulfilled? And so right there in that passage, Jesus is revealing to his disciples, he goes, this is the plan all along, and I'm still in control. I'm still in control. Many times armor bearers can become very defensive against their leaders, or to do something for their leaders if they think their leader is making a big mistake, when really recognizing that maybe the leader has a bigger plan. Maybe there's a bigger plan on why the leader has to take certain steps. And we can have faith to trust in that. And it's a big thing, but there was a plan all along that Jesus had, and he's just asking them to go with him in this. Now, when we are in that armor bearer role, there's going to be countless moments where we don't have all the facts on what our leaders have, as I was saying earlier. Okay, and when we can think that our leader is trying to sink themselves, or even our ministry, but in these moments, listening and trusting the leader is so vital, and trusting that the leader has a plan in place. With Christ, there was a plan from the beginning. Maybe the results of a leader's plans will lead them into trouble. Maybe it might seem suicidal, but it's important, it's vital for us to know that the leader could be anticipating that trouble before it comes. Jesus knew going into this whole situation with his arrest exactly what was going to go down, and he was prepared and willing to do it regardless. Sometimes we can be, as armor bearers, we can be so defensive against our leaders and think that they're making a big mistake, when maybe that leader has a plan from the beginning, and that we just need to trust in that plan. That they might even anticipate the trouble. They might anticipate that they're not going to become very popular, but they're our leader, and in that regards, we should still trust them. Okay. One of those things that we can anticipate that trouble comes. I had to speak up against a resolution that came up a couple weeks ago, almost 2 weeks now, at a pastor's meeting, and it was a resolution that dealt with changing our doctrines disapproved. The Assemblies of God has a section where they have doctrines and practices that are disapproved, and that if you do teach on those subjects, your credentials can be at risk. And so it's important for us to recognize that thing. And so there was an individual who wanted to change what those doctrines were, and he wanted to remove them from being disapproved and basically make it an allowance to teach on those things. And I saw where that would run into some conflicting areas in other parts of our governing documents and our other doctrines that we believe is part of the fellowship of the Assemblies of God. And so I stood up. I prepared a statement, and I stood up to address this possibility of allowing wrong doctrines, and I knew that it would make me a very popular individual, in the sense that both people are going to be thankful for me, and people are going to be mad at me for doing what I did. But that's the thing, is I counted the costs. I saw that it was necessary to go in a dangerous direction, and so I did. I stood up and I said, "Here's the plan." And regardless of whatever risk came upon me, that was what I did. Modern young individuals, staffers, ministry leaders, armor bearers, are would come against this issue. When we want to be influential, we want to be authoritative, and so when something is threatening us to be blacklisted, many young people will pull away so that doesn't occur, and they want to get that popular. Yet the good leader will always know what is worth getting blacklisted for, and is willing to speak up. I am willing. I have hills to die on, and those hills are important. And if it means that I'm going to be blacklisted for standing upon that hill, then hey, I'm going to be blacklisted for it, because there's a bigger plan at play than just my own prestige, and trusting God in those moments. Okay. Now, following Jesus' arrest, okay, he was in on the plan from the beginning. He revealed that he was still in control, that this is what it meant, but yet something still very troubling occurred in our text. In verse 56, it says the disciples left him. They couldn't stand with him in this moment. And so Jesus is going forward. The master's got a plan. He's going forward. The scriptures have got to be fulfilled. And even then, their leaving him was fulfilled. It says, it talks about in the prophecy of the Messiah that his followers are going to be scattered. And but again, this whole misunderstanding of the plans, they could not they couldn't stand with him, and so they fled in this moment. And here's what's amazing about this is not the end of their story. And I think that's something that's important we need to grasp as we read this, because it does talk about them fleeing and running away and not going with Jesus. That's not the end of their story. That's not the end of their usefulness, but that there's so much more usefulness that the disciples come and they bring to this table. And that even though they didn't stand with him in that moment, they were still chosen for a purpose. They were still chosen to do something great and mighty. However, their inability to grasp the fullness of the master's plan has caused them to flee. As leaders, when our team of armor bearers flee, instead of following us into the fray, we want our team to follow us into the fray. We want them to follow us into the danger zone. We want them to come with us so that they can stand with us. That's our desire. But sometimes those moments, those battles that you're going through, those things that you're facing, those difficult seasons, those trying moments, sometimes your team is not going to catch the vision in that moment. They're not going to catch what you're doing, and they may step back. They may fail. They may fall. They may flee in the moment. But just because that happens, don't take it personally. Sometimes, like I said, they're just trying to protect you. Sometimes they're just trying to stand up and protect them. Don't take it personally. They just didn't see what you saw. They didn't have the full deck of cards with the decisions that they're needing to make, that you're making. They did not have all the details. And so now, see, as the leader, if we are off the word of God, then yeah, take it personally. Take their objections, because you're off campus, you're off the ranch, you're off the reservation, you're making mistakes. But if you are on the right direction, if you're off task, if you're off the path and they're speaking up, they're trying to save your life, that's legit. But if you're off the word of God, I mean, when you're off the word of God, they speak up, they're trying to save your life because you're off it. But when you are on the word of God, if you are biblically found, solid in the truth, and standing firm, sooner or later they will get the message. Sooner or later they'll come to that proper conclusion that they need in that moment, and it should be inspiring to them. It should be building them up. See, even though these disciples abandoned Jesus in the moment, eventually they returned. Okay. They were restored, and they did all that God intended with their lives. So when our teams, our armor bearers, talking to leaders right here, when they try to protect us and they don't get all the ideas, or they may flee in the moment, that there's still some usefulness that could come back, and that we need to look for that return, and not to give up on them. And so, that's an important thing. Speaking to armor bearers right now, armor bearers, trust your leaders. Trust the men and women of God, and that they do operate with more information than you think. If they stand solid upon the word and they are uncompromising, and they are biblically found, trust them. And don't flee. Don't try to correct them. If they're doing what is right in their eyes and right by the word of God and following in his steps, then trust them and stand with them, and that would be a great encouragement. It is, and I say this, And I say this too as a former as an armor bearer, as a former staff pastor. Stand with your leader. Stand with them, support them, encourage them, strengthen them. If they are found biblically solid, stand firm with them. Now, if they're off, hey, warn them. I mean, you can save their lives if they're off. But if they're biblically found and solid and going in the proper direction, trust them and go with them. Leaders, don't give up on your armor bearers just because they don't get your plans. Okay? If they are truly humble, and if you lead well, they will get it eventually. This is an important part of what it means to be an armor bearer, and it is an amazing part to see through this New Testament passage as Christ gets arrested, and we see the disciples try to respond, trying to protect him, but again failing with getting the idea. And as a principle for us, there's going to be times when we get the master's plans, and there's going to be times when we don't get the master's plans, but we cannot allow that to affect our faithfulness. I hope you're enjoying these series, and if you missed any part, rewind, watch it again. This is a wonderful opportunity for you. We meet in person Sunday mornings. 9 a.m. is Sunday school, 10 a.m. is worship, 6 p.m. on Sunday nights is prayer, and those are wonderful services on Sunday morning. And then our in-person Wednesday nights, our classes begin at 6:30 on Wednesday nights. And so always welcome to have you out here and be a part of the family. If you're not able to come in person or you live out of state, hey, you know what? You're finding this online. And so we are so thankful for you for watching this program online and that you can watch our live stream. Our live stream is Sunday mornings, 10 o'clock. Some of them might not be completely live streamed, and that has to do primarily with sensitive guests, such as missionaries to foreign nations that are dangerous, risky. But we want to honor their safety and honor them as well as they present to our church family. Also, our midweek online program, we release it on Thursday mornings, and so I hope that you enjoy these as well. Thank you for watching these and being a part of our Bible study. You have a great day, and God bless. Until next time.